I'm going to teach you how to make $1 million. There are actually many ways to make $1 million, but first, I want to show you what $1 million even looks like. This is what $1 million looks like in $1 bills. This is what it looks like in $100 bills. And this is what it looks like in your bank account. Looks pretty great, right? I was told several times growing up by teachers, parents, and even preachers that I would need $1 million by the time I retire just to live reasonably comfortably in my final years. And maybe they only said that because of how bad the markets looked at the time, but I took the challenge seriously. And since I'm now married, I take it to mean that we need $1 million each. So how in the world am I going to save $2 million by the time I'm 65? Making $1 million by the time you retire actually isn't all that difficult, and it's completely possible because of interest and time. Over the long haul, money invested in the stock market historically doubles every 7 to 10 years. So, just taking the more conservative of these numbers, you simply need to count backwards to see how much money you need to invest in order to have $1 million. So to rely on the stock market alone, if you can invest $62,500 by the time you're 25 years old, it should grow to an even $1 million in 40 years. Or, if you just invest $6,000 every year starting when you're 21, you should have around $1 million by the time you're 65. But typically when we talk about becoming millionaires, we don't just mean when we retire, we mean now. We don't just want to have money when we're old, we want to have it now, while we're young, and able to have some fun with it. So let's talk about ways you can make $1 million as soon as possible, even by the time you're 25. You may have heard about people who have made millions in cryptocurrency these last few years. And I'm not going to tell you to stay away from crypto entirely, because it definitely has further potential. But we should also be realistic, rather than blindly hopeful about such things. And there's just no way of knowing when or if you'll strike it big with crypto. And there's also a good chance you'll lose all your money. So we're just going to stick with methods that are tried and true. And there's no more tried and true method than hard work. Do something that others don't want to do themselves, and they'll pay you to do it. It's really that simple. In your spare time, start a lawn care business, or clean houses, or shovel snow. Or if manual labor isn't really your thing, learn how to code and create software that solves a problem. The possibilities really are endless if you're willing to work hard. And the hard truth is that there's no fast road to $1 million that doesn't include hard work. If it was easy, then everyone would do it. And yet, it is totally possible with hard work. All you have to do is break it down into smaller, more reasonable chunks.
Baby steps?
$1 million sounds impossible at first, but it's really just making $100,000 10 times. And if $100,000 also sounds impossible to you, just remind yourself that $100,000 is just $10,000 10 times. So if your goal is to make $1 million, don't focus on making $1 million. Do what you need to do in order to make $10,000, and then do that 10 times, and you'll have $100,000. And then just do what you just did 10 more times, and you'll have $1 million. By the way, I got this idea from Steve Harvey.
It's called the multiples of 10.
But of course, that's easier said than done. If you're 20 years old and you want to make $1 million by the time you're 25, you essentially need to make $200,000 per year for the next 5 years. That's not easy, but once again, it's possible. If having $1 million really is your goal, you just need to make a plan as to how to get there. But before you do, ask yourself this: what will life look like for you once you get $1 million? Because when it comes down to it, $1 million is just a big number. For some reason, many of us have this unfounded idea that if we only had $1 million, life would somehow be easier. Even though there's really no basis for this idea, we think it's like magic. We think that $1 million would solve so many of our problems. We imagine life would be full of luxury and ease, maybe living in a mansion on the beach or driving expensive cars. But the reality is that $1 million isn't really that much money at all. Depending on where you live, $1 million won't last you more than about 10 years, and that's if you just live a normal life. If you make any extravagant purchases whatsoever, you can burn through that money pretty quick, which would completely defeat the purpose of saving $1 million in the first place. So rather than shooting for a specific arbitrary dollar amount like $1 million, it's much more wise to think about the type of lifestyle you actually want to live, whether now or in retirement, and calculate what you actually need to live that lifestyle. Unless you want to be a big spender, it's likely not actually $1 million. Some retirement calculators I've used estimate that my wife and I together will only need about $600,000 when we retire, since we live in a very low cost of living area, and we really don't need much to be happy. That's a far cry from the $2 million we assumed we would need. But hey, if you can't let go of the idea of living in a mansion or driving expensive cars, it's not really $1 million that you want. What you really want is a higher income. And for that, watch this next video about the fastest way to increase your income. It's totally possible to live the lifestyle you want without being rich. Because if I can do it, you can do it too. I'm just an average guy.